Greeting, friends, my name is Ihor Havryshchak. This is the YouTube channel 24. Traditionally, Thursday evening, and our guest is a political scientist from the United States of America and former Chief of Staff of the Azerbaijani government Ramiz Yunus. Mr. Yunus, hello.
Greetings. Thank you for the invitation. I am glad to see you in good health. Greetings to all our esteemed audience. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. We have a live broadcast. I will ask our viewers to be active, write comments, ask, like, share our conversation, live broadcast. And now, at this moment, Mr. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy is arriving in the United States. And he, as far as I know, maybe you have more operational information, he arrived at the capital for a meeting. How important will this meeting be? What can be decided there, and can any unexpected decisions be presented?
At this moment, he is no longer in the capital, he is already in the White House. And at the moment, he is meeting with the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, while we are talking with you now. And immediately after that, his meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris should take place. That's what's happening at the moment. Therefore, as I understand it, after our conversation, the audience will be able to see a live report of the news conference, because after the talks they will have to leave and there will be a press conference, so keep a close eye on the reports that will be announced today. As for the information that we have today, the meeting between Biden and President Zelenskyy took place on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, where the leaders of the G7 met. And in addition to the meeting of the G7 leaders, a document was signed, as President Zelenskyy called it, a new Marshall Plan for the reconstruction of Ukraine. It has been signed by more than 30 countries, and these are mainly all the key economies of the world. That is, these are all the countries of the G7, these are the key countries of the European Union and NATO. That is, the main economies on the planet, so this is a very important point, and each individual country has made its own powerful statements. The same President Biden signed a decree so that they no longer worry about the money that was supposed to be used by the end of this month. These are all 8 billion for the most part from the Pentagon's warehouses. That is, this is what already exists, and what will be directly delivered to Ukraine before the end of Joe Biden's presidential term, in the near future. This is such a large amount. And the first package for 2.5 billion, it seems, has been announced, and it includes one Patriot complex, it includes long-range missiles for 130 kilometers, and many other things. Plus, it also includes funding to train another 18 pilots for the F-16 next year, so that they could already fly in the skies of Ukraine. That is, this is a large package. The UK spoke. It said that every year 3 billion will be given. Ursula von der Leyen also took part in this meeting. She spoke and confirmed that the 35 billion that will be allocated from the frozen Russian assets will be covered. Therefore, the leitmotif of all these statements in plain text was that it was made immediately after the statement of the President of Russia, who announced a change in some points in Russia's nuclear doctrine. But if we look at the previous nuclear doctrine, we compare it with the current nuclear doctrine, we are sure that there is no big difference as such. This is just information noise, but in essence nothing changes there. Because in the previous doctrine there was a threat to the territorial integrity of Russia, and in the current one it is. Therefore, if the previous doctrine, which was new for the last 4 years, has not been used in any way over the past 4 years, what has changed that will be used now? It's just clear that there is a general session of the United Nations, attention to Ukraine, this information attack on the whole world from the point of view of what President Zelensky is doing today. Being in New York, being in Washington, that is, the Ukrainian topic, it is again in first place on the planet. And the election campaign here in the United States of America. It is at this moment that the president of Russia comes out and gives a pass to Donald Trump's team so that he would run into public opinion in the United States of America and once again frighten the American man in the street with the threat of nuclear war. This has always been done regularly, as you remember. But I don't think it has that much of a stake on public opinion here in the US. For the simple reason that if it had any influence at the very beginning, then after all the processes that we have seen, and all the similar statements from the Kremlin in one case or another, thousands of times there have already been some red lines that the Kremlin has outlined, and thousands of times these red lines have been overcome. I am not even talking about the statement by Burns and some other high-ranking representatives of the West, who popularly explained on the topic of nuclear blackmail that this will not give Russia victory in this war, but it will lead to the fastest and most instant defeat of Russia. And then why use these nuclear weapons? That is, it makes no sense, moreover, to use these nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear state. And so to drag this topic by the ears, it does not work, especially if Crimea and Donbass are your territory. Then why have you not implemented this nuclear doctrine during all this time? Therefore, everyone already understands that this is a pass to Donald Trump. This is support for his administration, because, as you can see, President Zelensky was also involved in the election campaign, reluctantly, forced him, so to speak, because his visit to the plant in Pennsylvania caused such a huge splash of emotions on the part of Republican leaders. Speaker Johnson wrote an open letter, appealed to President Zelensky to dismiss Oksana Markarova, because she was the one who organized this visit. The ambassador of Ukraine is engaged in the organization together with the current administration, so Speaker Johnson also ran into the administration, appealed to the Department of Justice, to the General Inspectorate in order to check how this complies with American law. Because there is an American law that prohibits some kind of political campaigning in favor of a particular candidate during working hours at a state-owned enterprise that is financed from the budget, and this plant in Pennsylvania is financed from the budget and is under the jurisdiction of the Pentagon. But it wasn't there. It's just another matter. He wrote that there was not a single representative of the Republican Party, and their President Zelensky voiced narratives that are close to the Democratic Party. And if this is so, it means that he got involved. He no longer adheres to equidistance. He took a specific side, and based on this, we must dismiss Oksana Markarova as well. But how can Congress? What does it have to do with? Only President Zelensky can do this, but I don't think President Zelensky will do that in such a situation. Or do something about the ambassador of Ukraine, especially under dictation. Whatever it was, because this is again interference in the internal affairs of a sovereign state. And I have no doubt that in the near future the Ministry of Justice and the General Inspectorate will give their conclusion, an official conclusion as to whether there was a violation or not. But the very fact that there was speculation, and after that, for the last 2 days at rallies in the same Pennsylvania and in other cities where Donald Trump and J.D. Vance speak, there have already been personal anti-Ukrainian and anti-Ukrainian speeches against President Zelensky, both from Donald Trump and from J.D. Vance. That is, it is clear that there is already talk that Donald Trump is refusing to meet with President Zelensky. There is talk that he proposed that he come to him in Mar-a-Lago. President Zelensky himself refused this, because it would then be participation on the side of Donald Trump. Because why should he go to his home, he should meet with him on some official territory. President Biden and Kamala Harris are meeting on official territory. This official territory is called the White House. They work there. Therefore, they can meet at Trump Tower in New York, but not at their ranch, so this is very important. And now all these battles, we are all hearing now. Against the backdrop of the fact that the President of Russia has made a statement here, and against this background, this meeting took place, and this document signed by more than 30 countries led by the United States of America, Canada, and leading countries, as I said, including the European Union. Therefore, all this together suggests that passions are heating up. In the next few months, we will see a huge amount of this type of information, because this different information will relate to both the Russian-Ukrainian war and the Middle East. Because the president of Iran has previously made some statements here that are unexpected for Russia and unexpected for the West. And if we remember what statements he made even before coming here, and remember how in Iran there was not the reaction that everyone was waiting for example, that Iran would openly confront Israel. And we see this president of Iran talking about how after I came to the president's office, we didn't even send drones there. I'm not even talking about ballistic missiles. Maybe it was done before me, but now in my time it was not done. And he says this publicly, you know. And you see that the EU presidents and other Western representatives meet with him, in huge numbers. This once again shows that Iran also flew here in order to establish some contacts with Western countries, key ones, including the current administration here in the White House. And it is no coincidence that over the past month you have seen that relations between Iran and Russia have been complicated, and there have been tensions in the same way. Therefore, in this situation, if it is more profitable for Iran that the democratic administration remains, then it is beneficial for Netanyahu that the Trump administration comes. And so this escalation began regarding Lebanon and Hezbollah. If we ask Russia, then, of course, Russia relied on Donald Trump, and therefore we heard this statement from the lips of the President of Russia. What am I getting at? My point is that in the next month and a half we will hear many more of these types of statements, so it is very important to wait for this meeting. What can they say publicly today? But I think that these, so to speak, financial influences until the end of this year and in such a large amount, and the fact that the key countries of the collective West are standing together next to Ukraine on this issue, this suggests that until the end of this year, there is no need to wait for any talks, neither about negotiations, nor about any other moments. Events on the battlefield will definitely become even tougher. It is far from accidental. Russia is intensifying its successes. Ukraine will try to strengthen its successes. And I think that in the next month and a half, we will see a lot of messages not only in the information plane, in terms of political battles, both here inside the United States and regarding the Russian-Ukrainian war, but we will see a lot of what will happen directly on the battlefield. Because today the Russian-Ukrainian war has begun to affect the elections here in the United States even a little more than the Middle East. Because the Middle East theme, as if after everything that happened there was not allowed to go beyond the shores in Gaza. Now, as I understand it, the United States of America, the current administration will do everything to prevent this from also going abroad. I mean in Lebanon, Hezbollah, so that there is no such uncontrolled escalation there either. And here, of course, the interests of the Biden administration and the Netanyahu administration categorically do not coincide, and the interests of the Zelenskyy administration and the Biden administration coincide here more than the interests of Donald Trump and his team regarding the Russian-Ukrainian war. Based on this, all parties will play to the maximum on all these cases, on all these tracks in the next month and a half.
Mr. Yunus, I would also like to clarify, we remembered the new alleged nuclear doctrine. What's interesting? Putin announced it the day before Volodymyr Zelensky's meeting in the capital with congressmen and a meeting with Joe Biden. Interestingly, I will remind the audience that the category of states and military alliances against which nuclear deterrence is carried out has been updated and expanded. And Putin says that now a non-nuclear state that is supported or assisted by a nuclear state will also be allegedly an enemy of Russia and will also be subject to nuclear deterrence. And you have already said that Putin said this, then Trump picked it up and also began to project it for the domestic consumer in the United States of America. But I have a question. To what extent should this alleged change in nuclear doctrine affect Ukraine's partners in order to give or not to give the green light to the use of Western weapons on the territory of the Russian Federation?
I think the statement of the President of Russia about this doctrine says that, let's be honest, this means the weakness of Russia. It means that Putin officially admits that he has no other levers to win this war. He does not have any. The only lever they have is nuclear weapons, which means they don't have conventional weapons, which they have always said is the second army with which they are ready to win. It means that they are not succeeding, and he is forced to engage in this nuclear blackmail. Moreover, just blackmail, exactly bluffing. And if earlier, at the very beginning, it somehow affected the average person, then over the past 2.5 years I have listened to the speeches of today, literally everyone, and Blinken on this topic, the speeches of Ursula von der Leyen, the official representative of the European Union, the United States, Jose Borrell. I listened to everyone, not to mention representatives of other countries, including Poland and Finland. Here, basically, all the key leaders have spoken on this topic. And they did not say in principle that they were afraid. They said the opposite. And the UK as well. All these statements were made after this meeting, at which Joe Biden announced $8 billion. The UK announced $3 billion. Ursula von der Leyen announced $35 billion. They all spoke. They all condemned this rhetoric of nuclear blackmail. I would also add that we have not yet heard what China and India have said on this topic. Because here, of course, China will be categorically against this. China is against such rhetoric in general, so that it is voiced. It is clear that this is voiced in the first place. I want you to throw it all away. There are two main points here. Why did the President of Russia come out and say this right now? The first reason he did it is because the presidential campaign is here, and it's a pass to Donald Trump. Definitely, so that he frightens the average person, and so they do it from morning to evening, both he and J.D. Vance. That is, if you give us a vote, you will be for us. There will be no nuclear war. There will be no Third World War. Because we will neutralize Russia, we will make a deal. That's it. We are ready for this. And Russia is ready to make this deal with us. This is the thesis that he voiced. And the second point, why did the President of Russia speak right now, at this moment? In order to neutralize this information background of support for Ukraine, at the level at which it exists. That is, there is no way to say that this is support at the level at which it suits Ukraine. We are all unhappy with this support. I want to, but I'm afraid, and Mum says no. One step forward, then 2 steps back. But they have had this tactic for 2.5 years now. And slowly but surely, they have already reached the F-16 from HIMARS. That is, they have gone all this way through all the nomenclature. But they just did not go the right way at the level at which Ukraine and all the friends of Ukraine need, for example, for this war to end. But in any case, they follow this path. And so if we compare the United Nations every year, a year ago, as it was, 2 years ago, as it was, this is the 4th time that President Zelensky has come, as far as I remember, here in Washington. And when we look at it, let's compare it, it didn't go down. Never went down. And now, given that there is a presidential campaign here, and the speculative nature of these foreign policy topics, I mean the Russian-Ukrainian war, the war in the Middle East, and its peaceful movements, and the possibility of negotiations in the South Caucasus between Azerbaijan and Armenia, these are three cases on which the United States and Antony Blinken personally are actively working today. Antony Blinken does not get out of the Middle East. You have seen Antony Blinken and his emissaries in the South Caucasus. First of all, O'Brien, his right-hand man, and he himself literally regularly calls the president of Azerbaijan and the prime minister of Armenia. By the way, in this regard, if it is interesting, we can talk about the meeting between Pashinyan and Erdogan in Turkey. Therefore, all this suggests that they need some kind of success. And if these speculative topics arise, it means that the Ukrainian topic will be very much in the first place. And, as you can see, the last few days in the United Nations from morning to evening, because there was a meeting of the United Nations Security Council, and then President Zelenskyy spoke at the plenary session. He spoke twice, at the Security Council and there. And he performed quite strongly. His speechwriters, I noted this in previous broadcasts, prepared a very powerful, strong speech. And there is the most powerful phrase about the United Nations and its charter. According to the charter, it cannot be one thing for Ukraine, another for Russia, a third for Azerbaijan or for any other country. The charter of the United Nations is one. And it is the same for everyone. Therefore, we must adhere to this charter. And he thereby sent his answer, and to everyone else. Even in the West, it was not only a response to Brazil and China. This was also a response to the President of the Czech Republic, who blurted out such stupid statements to the American press. Therefore, all this speaks of the toughness of Ukraine's position, the right toughness. About attacking diplomacy, this is also very correct. And the fact that he visited this plant in Pennsylvania was not because he wanted to participate in the election campaign. He just came there to thank you. He had to do it. But another thing, note how the speculation of the Ukrainian topic, it raised the degree of this visit to such a level that the Republicans openly attacked President Zelenskyy. And what did you want? Should he have come to thank you for the fact that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are calling for a deal at the expense of the loss of Ukraine's territorial integrity? That is, he should have thanked you for this? Therefore, you yourself provoke him to say thank you to those who support him today. He comes out and says thank you, and you say against. Therefore, the election campaign is underway, and the forces are participating in this election campaign not only here in America, but also in the foreign market. And therefore, the statement of the President of Russia on a new nuclear doctrine is based on these 2 points. This is a pass to President Trump to amplify his rhetoric. And this is in order to neutralize the effect of such Ukrainian information stuffing, the Ukrainian information machine on public opinion here in the United States of America. But, again, this is all directly related to the previous campaign, because the Russian president needs the current administration to come out and Donald Trump should come. I am just giving an examination. I want the audience to understand that I don't care. Who will win this election campaign, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, because I do not support the policies of Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, or Joe Biden. And first of all, regarding all the geopolitical challenges that exist on the planet. But just expertise, it sometimes tends to the fact that we have to call a spade a spade. And I can't say today that Donald Trump or J.D. Vance supports Ukraine. Donald Trump and James oppose the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. And the Biden administration and Kamala Harris, although they do not advocate from morning to evening for your sovereignty, territorial integrity. First of all, they are to blame for your loss in 2014. They were Biden and Barack Obama. But today they are at least protecting you and are next to you, financing and providing weapons, and thus the allies in Europe have pulled themselves up in this area, which has given you the opportunity to preserve your statehood and your state at the level at which it was possible today. But this is not enough to solve this main problem. This is not enough for Ukraine to win this war. And that's why I don't support a democratic administration. That is, this is not enough, so I do not support them. And these are categorically against this. Therefore, it is better for me to give you an examination, and you decide for yourself who to vote for in this situation. That is, this is a purely pragmatic approach, and this is an examination. Because just from my words, many may think that what I am saying is me campaigning for the Democrats. But if Ukrainians listen to me, then Ukrainians understand without me that it is necessary to vote for the Democrats. But if Israelis ask, they will certainly go and vote for Donald Trump. Because here, too, I will say unequivocally that Donald Trump supports Israel unconditionally. And not only Netanyahu, first of all, Netanyahu supports, this is his personal friend, but, again, he does not play on the Palestinian street, he definitely plays on the Israeli street. Democrats play on both Israel and Palestinian streets. Just like in the South Caucasus, for example, Donald Trump is not interested in this problem today. This suits Azerbaijan, this suits Turkey. You see, in this regard. And Biden and his team, and Kamala Harris, they play on Armenian Street, California and everything else. We have already been through this 100 times. Therefore, as I told you just now, this must be understood as Iran. In the same way, this is also an examination. Iran seems to be considered an ally of the same Russia. They have a 20-year agreement, which they must extend in October at this BRICS. Whether it will be extended or not, it remains to be seen, because Russia is stubborn today, because they have a problem in the north-south. They will open it or not. And the new president of Iran himself would not have gone here to New York and would not have made such statements. Surely he coordinated this with the spiritual leaders of Iran. This means a pass to the West. We want to make some kind of deal, or a nuclear deal. That is, it turns out that the US administration would like to snatch Iran from the embrace of the same Russia. As much as possible, as it was during the Obama-Biden era, when there was this nuclear deal. And that is why it is Masoud Pezeshkian, now the president of Iran, who is so well and warmly received by both the American public and the media. That is, a different type of rhetoric. And Moscow cannot help but see this. Look, it is more profitable for Iran today for the democratic administration to stay. For Russia, it is more profitable for Trump to stay. And Iran and Russia, they seem to be allies. Do you understand how intertwined interests are here? And here are Iran and Israel on the one hand. And now Israel wants escalation, and this administration here in Washington doesn't want that escalation. Look, do you see what a tangle? And this tangle is directly tied to the Russian-Ukrainian war, and to the Middle East, and to the South Caucasus, and maybe somewhere else it can explode, but I don't think it will explode, because in the near future everything is under control. To what extent all these interests have manifested, and therefore it remains only to wait for the opinion of the American voter. I think that in the next month and a half we will witness a lot of interesting events in all these cases, I emphasize, in all these cases in the South Caucasus, in the Middle East, and on the Russian-Ukrainian front.
Mr. Yunus, I would also like to ask you about Zelensky's visit to the plant in Pennsylvania. Don't you think that this is a quickly played beautiful performance? Because just now, the White House press secretary said the following, that just 2 months ago, President Zelenskyy visited Utah and held a very similar event with a Republican governor. Representatives of the Republican Party were also present at that event. There was not a single demand for an investigation. Don't you think that the Republicans and Trump decided at the last moment to cling to a show, to have a basis for a discussion with Pennsylvania and the arms factory? Because Trump's words that Zelenskyy is making dirty little attacks in my direction are already very serious words.
This is not so much related to what you have just voiced. It is most likely to find an excuse for Trump not to meet with President Zelenskyy. It is the occasion that is needed. Because why would he meet him? A simple question. Now he has met with Biden. Biden allocated $8 billion. Now he will meet with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris will repeat everything that Joe Biden said. In principle, we will support Ukraine. All beautiful words. Everything that Ukraine needs, President Zelenskyy. He will thank him for this. That is, even if a person does not say everything that you need, but he says at least what you ask him for, roughly speaking, on credit, there's $1 million, and he comes to you and says, here's $250,000 for you, somehow change the bank. But again, he still says thank you for these $250. He doesn't say that I won't give you a penny. And this one says, I won't give you a penny. Therefore, in this situation, why date him if you know that he will not give you a penny? On the contrary, he will tell you, go, negotiate with the one to whom you owe, go into bondage, he will tell you this. This is what Donald Trump wants to offer Zelenskyy. And therefore, of course, if they meet, after that they will have to go out to the journalists, and during the meeting with journalists they will ask questions there. And they will ask questions to Trump, and they will ask questions to President Zelenskyy. And these questions will have to be answered, because today we do not say anything, we do not hear anything. J.D. Vance speaks for President Trump, and he can always say, it's J.D. Vance who said, I'm not responsible for him. When they said about the 2025 plan, which was announced by Donald Trump's inner circle, he said, I haven't even read this paper yet. That is, he wants to distance himself from the topic of Ukraine in every possible way so as not to say anything about this topic. Because his political technologies told him that this topic harms us, you try to keep silent on this topic. Only well, he became mostly silent. Let this J.D. Vance go ahead. So J.D. Vance has uttered such nonsense that President Zelenskyy tells him, study history. And now, openly, when it became clear that after the unsuccessful debates between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and Trump's refusal to hold the next debates, that is, it turns out that now Zelenskyy is coming here, and Zelenskyy will meet with both Biden and Kamala Harris. The question arises, does this mean that you should also date him? And President Zelenskyy publicly said that I want to meet with him. I want to provide my victory plan to both the current president and the two current presidential candidates. That is, he is doing everything that the president of a country that is friendly to the United States and does not adhere to any position, whether Republican or Democratic, should do. But Donald Trump finds himself in a difficult situation, because he opposes the sovereignty of territorial integrity. He is in favor of a deal, to the detriment of the sovereignty of territorial integrity, and he will meet with him, and what he will say to him, when this one comes to him, this plan will show, and this plan, for example, will receive. And this plan, for example, will receive support in Congress or receive support in the White House within some limits, which, in all cases, they will correspond to the level of support that the White House provides to Ukraine today. And here from this side there is complete criticism, that is, a call for surrender, a call for what Ukraine could have done 2.5 years ago at these Istanbul talks. So the question is, if Ukraine did not agree to this 2.5 years ago, why on earth should Ukraine go for it today? Just because Donald Trump wants it, I think President Zelenskyy will send him far away and for a long time. Unambiguously. And it is on this basis that Donald Trump understands that a meeting with him can hit his rating, because he cannot offer them anything, he will offer him defeat. President Zelenskyy is, after all, a direct person, as you understand. He can say something publicly. So it's better not to meet him. And how to make sure that you find a good reason not to date. And now he is looking for a reason that there was allegedly some kind of violation of the election campaign when visiting this plant during working hours. And they are already raising the topic of the need to dismiss Ambassador Oksana Markarova, looking for some kind of scandal. And it is far from accidental, which is why President Trump allows himself at rallies, and he and J.D. Vance for the last 2 days to draw direct conclusions about President Zelenskyy. That is, they create a negative atmosphere so that this meeting does not take place. But if this meeting does not take place, only Donald Trump personally and his election campaign will lose from this. Unambiguously. Because the topic of Ukraine is speculative. And I don't think that the team of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will not take advantage of this. Unambiguously. And if it is such a demonstration against President Zelenskyy cannot have any other options to strengthen the position of the same Democrats. Because if this is the case, if you refuse, if you openly say that you do not want us, our opponent will openly strengthen his contacts with the current administration in the next month and a half, and I think this can also affect the outcome of these elections.
Mr. Yunus, this is already a tradition. We always remember what is happening in the South Caucasus. From the latter, at the 79th Union Film Assembly, Turkish President Erdogan and Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan met. There, even Erdogan presented Pashinyan with his book A Fairer World is Possible. What are your assessments? How much closer does this meeting bring to the signing of peace agreements between Azerbaijan and Armenia?
The fact that the President of Turkey and the Prime Minister of Armenia met is, of course, a positive factor. And the fact that the meeting was held in a positive way, and the fact that the President of Turkey presented him with his book, and we were shown such a good, positive picture, it caused great indignation in Armenia itself and in those circles that oppose the peace treaty with Azerbaijan, against the improvement of relations between Turkey and Armenia. And I think the President of Turkey popularly explained to the Prime Minister of Armenia that the sooner a peace treaty is signed between Azerbaijan and Armenia, the sooner relations between Turkey and Armenia will improve. I think the President of Armenia also shared with him for sure the pressure under which he has recently fallen, primarily under the government of Emmanuel Macron. I mean the Armenian lobby in France, and here the Armenian lobby in the United States of America. Therefore, he is in a very difficult situation. Therefore, in the next month and a half, we will see a lot of events on this track as well. Now it is very important to see. He has not yet publicly announced whether he will come personally or the Armenian delegation at a high level to Baku for this international climate conference COP29, which will gather, so to speak, the whole world and all the leaders, the main key representatives. This will take place from November 10th to 23 in Baku, and, of course, the Armenian delegation has been officially invited to this, and the Americans, the current administration is putting pressure on both Baku and Yerevan, but the interests of the current administration do not coincide with the interests of Azerbaijan and Armenia. Because Azerbaijan does not want to sign a paper just like that. Azerbaijan wants to sign a paper on the basis of the Charter of the United Nations, and on the basis of the fact that there is an unresolved problem today. Key problem. And this is the main key problem that Azerbaijan is resonating. 2 points. First, foremost, this is an amendment to the Constitution of Armenia. There is a clause in the Constitution of Armenia to this day. The preamble to the Declaration of Independence of Armenia clearly states that Karabakh is the territory of Armenia. How can they sign the document after that? Therefore, we need some kind of document, at least, or a roadmap, which will indicate that this will be removed from the constitution. Then Armenia undertakes to do this. If this is done, it will be, so to speak, a significant shift in this direction. And secondly, what Azerbaijan is saying is that it is necessary to remove talk about the OSCE Minsk group, which included the United States, Russia and France. Because the OSCE Minsk group was created 30 years ago, when this conflict began. In these almost 30 years, this OSCE Minsk group has not achieved anything. This group only drove this conflict deeper. And this problem was not solved. The situation was not war, not peace. Like the Normandy 4 you have, this type. Now the war is over, Azerbaijan has won, Azerbaijan has liberated its territory, restored its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Azerbaijan says, let's Armenia and Azerbaijan together appeal to the OSCE in order to eliminate this group. That is, Azerbaijan clearly says that the topic of Karabakh is closed, it has gone down in history, so the topic of Karabakh is not present in the relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Moreover, Azerbaijan demands the same relations with the United States of America and with France as well. In other words, if you want to build relations with Azerbaijan, you must build relations with Azerbaijan outside of Azerbaijan's relations with Armenia. That is, not to bind. Because the relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia are the relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan proposes to sign a peace treaty even without intermediaries. Because if there are mediators, each of them will promote its own agenda. Russia, for example, was now dissatisfied with the fact that Azerbaijan made a gesture of goodwill towards Armenia. Azerbaijan has agreed with Armenia to take it as a separate case for a while, the Zangezur corridor. This is what has been talked about for so long, a stumbling block, because Azerbaijan and Armenia have different positions there. Azerbaijan does not care who will control this territory. The main thing is that there is such a situation in this territory as through Kaliningrad, from Russia to Kaliningrad, Königsberg, goods pass through the territory of the Baltic countries. This is the type of corridor needed. Azerbaijan says that there should be a corridor of this type. And who will stand there? The FSB will stand. Some other international company will stand. This does not play any role. So that the order of crossing this territory, there are only 44 kilometers, seems to be exactly the same as this Zangezur corridor. Russia says that we must protect, because on the 9th point 4 years ago, Russia said that it should be protected by the FSB of Russia. This is how they guard the border with Iran, the border with Turkey. They want to do the same there. Because in this way Russia does not leave the game in this matter, it will have some leverage over both Armenia and Azerbaijan. Armenia opposes it. Azerbaijan says that this is your problem with Russia, you solve it yourselves. If Armenia does not want Russia to be there, definitely, Azerbaijan says, okay, I am temporarily putting this case aside for now. Temporarily in terms of the fact that Azerbaijan is in a hurry? We are still engaged in other infrastructure projects. On the Iranian side, there is also talk that on the other side of the Aras River we can hold the same Zangezur corridor. Iran wants that. That is, we are not in a hurry in this matter yet, but we have made this gesture. If we haven't reached an agreement yet, let's remove it from the peace treaty. It will be a separate case. And here are 17 points. And in these 17 points, these 2 points that I have told you about are the most key. So what did Armenia do? 4 points, including these 2, were removed from there. And 13 points, in which 80% of the agreement is already in place, Armenia proposes to sign it. How can this be signed today, when the key points of the peace treaty have not been agreed? And therefore, there is international practice, if at least one paragraph is not agreed, the entire document is not agreed. And America is pressuring to make at least some paper that could be presented to the public, including in the United States. That is, it is pompous to paint as the Oslo agreements were at one time. At Camp David, regarding the Middle East conflict, that the war in the Middle East is over? No. And for this piece of paper, by the way, at one time, Yasser Arafat, Yitzhak Rabin, and Shimon Peres were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So what? Why were they given the Nobel Peace Prize? Is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict over peacefully? No. The Nobel Peace Prize is given only when it happened, for example, Ulster Belfast in Ireland. This happened in the Republic of South Africa when apartheid ended. It happened. I have only been talking for the last 30 years. That is, it happened. And why was Barack Obama given the Nobel Peace Prize? Why was the Nobel Prize given to Yasser Arafat, Shimon Peres? For what was the Nobel Prize given to Mikhail Gorbachev? The Nobel Prize should be given to peace. And where there was blood, how can you give? Now the Nobel Prize can be given to the world. It could be given to both the President of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of Armenia, if they had signed a full-scale peace treaty in this situation. But Armenia is playing for time. Do you know why it is dragging its feet? Because they are also waiting for the results of these elections. Why are Armenia and the current administration in a hurry? Because in a month or a month and a half, it is still unknown whether this administration will remain or not, because this is the most pro-Ramian administration here in the United States. And if Donald Trump comes, the situation may change. And this situation will change not in favor of Armenia and its protégés in Paris, and its protégés here in California. And Azerbaijan will calmly take advantage of this, you can be sure. And all this is in parallel with this. Note what is happening in Armenia. The military budget of Armenia was made 1.7 billion. If you take the per capita population of the Armenians, there are 20 million extra people, imagine, and compare the 10 million Azerbaijani population. We also have a huge budget, but we have 10 million. The question is, why does Armenia receive weapons today? Buy weapons from India, France, Russia and other countries. Why do they need it? Are you preparing for some kind of war? And the president of Azerbaijan spoke the day before yesterday at a meeting of the newly opened parliament, and he said it clearly. He made direct messages to the West, including Yerevan. And now, I'm talking to you, and today a powerful military exhibition is being held in Azerbaijan. Many people do not know how much the military-industrial complex of Azerbaijan has developed today, and look at the money Azerbaijan invests in the military-industrial complex of its country today. And Azerbaijan already produces a huge number of such nomenclature names and weapons. And I'm not even talking about the fact that the components that exist today are the best on the planet. They are also in all these names. And look at who they cooperate with. Look at who came to the exhibition there. And there is Turkey, and there is Israel, and there is Italy, and many other leading countries that have great positions in this world in the field of the defense industry. And this is happening in Azerbaijan today. This means that Azerbaijan, in addition to the fact that we have a larger budget, in addition to the fact that we have weapons in huge quantities, we are now modernizing the whole thing. In a year we will have the armies of Turkey and Azerbaijan. It will be a single army under a single command. And this is all according to NATO standards. And this military-industrial complex of Azerbaijan, all the nomenclatures according to NATO standards, this suggests that Azerbaijan can self-sufficiently extinguish any risks in this region that may arise against Azerbaijan. I am not even talking about the capabilities of the military-industrial complex of Turkey, which, in recent years, as you understand, has come out at full steam ahead today. That is, this is enough to solve and extinguish the risks and tasks that exist in the South Caucasus. These are also messages that both Azerbaijan and the leadership of Azerbaijan are openly sending. Therefore, here we need to decide whether we need peace here or we are again following the path of escalation. Unfortunately, the political situation and the presidential elections in the United States have made hostage not only the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, and not only what is happening in the Middle East, but also the peace process, which could have come to its logical end long ago. I am referring to the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I look at all this quite positively from the point of view that these opportunities that Azerbaijan and its allies, I mean Turkey, Pakistan and Israel, have no chance for all those revanchists, whether in Armenia itself, or somewhere abroad. Whether it's in France or somewhere in the United States of America, especially in California, especially in the Democratic administration, so that they can get some result if they haven't been able to do anything in the last 4 years against the political background, I mean the Security Council, and these countries themselves, the executive branches, and the Biden administration, and the Macron administration, and many others, who in Europe tried to carry spokes in the wheels somewhere. As you can see, we have quite strong positions in the Security Council and the United Nations. And there are several countries that will always use the right of veto against any resolution directed against Azerbaijan, unequivocally. I can name 2 countries for sure. They will be Great Britain and China. They will always oppose any resolution if it is against Azerbaijan. This means that we have a strong position in the United Nations. As you can see, not a single resolution has been passed against Azerbaijan in the US Congress over these 4 years. On the ground, you see, the war is over. The Azerbaijani army is on the border with Armenia. We are modernizing. The armies of Turkey, the United States will be in a year. Unified armies. The military-industrial complex of Azerbaijan is developing strongly. The military budget of Azerbaijan is strengthening. And against this background, again, I will inform you, Azerbaijan has allocated 11 billion for the restoration of Karabakh. 11 billion. Do you know what it is? This is 3.5 of Armenia's budget. We are only investing in Karabakh for what these vandals have done over these 30 years. And look at which companies are taking part in it today, which countries are helping in all these processes, and these are the countries that are closely cooperating with Azerbaijan in all areas today. Italy is in first place. Turkey, Israel, Pakistan. These are all these countries and many other countries that have a very respectful and correct attitude towards the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. Therefore, in this situation, Azerbaijan has nowhere to hurry. Whether the Biden administration is here, whether Kamala Harris stays or takes her place, by and large, does not matter. but it would be desirable for those who will be involved in the foreign policy of the United States of America to understand that the status quo has changed. The situation is different in geopolitics, and even more so in such an important region in which you also want to have your interests. But again, look, Kamala Harris is receiving huge funding from the Armenian lobby today. She comes out with anti-Azerbaijani, pro-Armenian uprisings. Do you think Turkey will like it? Azerbaijan will like it? They will categorically not like it. Therefore, these are all points that we all must take into account. Again, I give an examination. It's just that viewers from Ukraine, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, they can watch in different ways. By the way, it is the same with Georgia. Irakli Kobankids came here. The entire American administration refused to meet with him. Not a single meeting categorically, because there is a confrontation between the Biden administration and the current government in Georgia. Understand? Therefore, all this is against the background of the fact that, by the way, there is a deterioration in Ukrainian-Georgian relations, an improvement in Georgian-Russian relations. You see how this tangle of all sorts of hot or problem spots, even in the post-Soviet space or in the Middle East, or in the region of Iran, Iraq, Syria. How all this is tied to the presidential campaign here in the United States. And therefore, in the next month and a half, we will witness a lot of interesting processes in all these trends. But in any case, I do not expect any escalation in the South Caucasus in the near future. There can be no new war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, because, first of all, Armenia is categorically not ready for this. If only Armenia begins to make a real movement in this direction, to go, then the Azerbaijani president has definitely said this in plain text. If only we see that on the territory of Armenia, I emphasize, on the territory of Armenia, he said, there will be something that will pose a specific military threat to Azerbaijan. They will be destroyed within the framework of international law, which, by the way, Ukraine is openly demonstrating today. When Ukraine entered the Kursk region today, what did they say here in the United States of America? What do all the allies in Europe say? This is within the framework of international law, because it is necessary to neutralize the threats to Ukraine that come from these border territories. Therefore, if there is any threat or some kind of revanchism from the border territories of Armenia, there will be some directives that will directly threaten Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan will not ask anyone for permission. Azerbaijan has all the opportunities for this, and today they are. In order to neutralize this. And the president of Azerbaijan openly stated this. Simply, as they say, if you want peace, prepare for war. And Azerbaijan adheres to this position.
Mr. Yunus, as always, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your analysis. And you divide three cases. These are the Middle East, the South Caucasus and Russia's war in Ukraine. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you. Goodbye. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. You must like, subscribe, comment and share our important conversation.